DJ Leroy.
Night Watchman, how you doing, buddy?
I'm well. How are you?
Good, good. So, DJ, you know that we actually did, I guess, complete almost the first week of early voting in New York City, man.
I can't wait to see the results.
Exactly. Because we certainly do know my former place, the BX, has some of the lowest turnouts in all, I would say, probably all of the U.S. Not good. And it's an important race that is happening, you know? So I think, you know, we probably should just have a conversation about not only the local stuff happening in New York City politics, but what about maybe expanding that and see what's happening, let's say, across the globe? What do you think?
Yeah, we're going global. Absolutely.
Whoa, Night Watchman. And I didn't even have to say please.
Well, we don't have to pay long distance bills anymore, so.
I like that. Well, I got to definitely bring up one, and like I say, he keeps it real, 100, especially when we're talking about, you know, some of the local dynamics here in politics. And he keeps it not only New York City, but also statewide, and that can only be my man, Judge Milton Tingling. Yes.
Welcome.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
All right. How you doing, Judge?
Well, I'm awake and I'm on the show, so I must be doing fantastic.
Exactly. And Night Watchman, you cannot make this up, but you know we got a couple of folks from across the pond, right? One of them I know quite well because he, you know, it's my brother, Sir Richard Harvey. Bring him up. Yes.
I can manage without the knighthood, thanks, Curtis.
Absolutely.
It's great to be with you guys.
Oh, beautiful. Another one, you know, originally though from England, but now he's in the south of France. Can you say Ron Critchlow?
Greetings, gentlemen.
Welcome, Ron.
Thank you.
Okay. So you know what? This other one now, I really actually was exposed to him early on in my life, you know, when I was just a mere pup. And he was actually doing a show with another guy by the name of Curtis. Ron Kuby, buddy. That's who I'm talking about.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's what I'm known for?
Yeah.
Hanging out with the guy who has a red condom on his head? Come on.
Wow.
Come on, Curtis. You got to big him up a little bit. This
Okay.
is one of the most celebrated attorneys in
Yes. What are you going to say, Night Watchman? I remember Talk Radio 77. What do you remember?
Come on. He was known way before he got on the radio with Sliwa. Come on.
Okay.
Please.
I met Kuby in 1979 together with Bill Kunstler when they were doing one of the many cases against the New York City cops.
See, we should have had you do the introductions, Richard.
Okay. I'm not sure if our final guest will be joining us because he's having some technical difficulties, and that would be Professor Wallace Ford. So you know what? Knowing what we know about this show and what the discussion is going to be, you know, Judge Tingling, I'd like to start off with you in terms of the state of politics, New York City style.
Well, the state of politics in New York City at the moment, for me, is transitional. We're looking at, quite frankly, the demise of the political world that I grew up in. And that political world consisted of clubs. It consisted of Democratic county organizations. It consisted of people actually going out and doing the work and being involved. What I found is, after being at this for about 50 years, is that dynamic has changed, and we're seeing it play out. This very interesting, just to get to, and I'll leave it for the moment there, the mayoral election.
Yes.
How much of the mayoral election is about issues? Because quite frankly, for me, everybody that all of them are saying is a bunch of bullshit. Okay, excuse me, grandma. You know, you're going to build 500,000 affordable. You don't. Sometimes you say affordable, sometimes you don't. You're going to build 500,000 apartments in 10 years. How are you going to do it? Okay. And it seems to be more about star power right now than anything else. than real issues. And the other thing is, I think that we're in a transitional period where we don't have enough people that we perceive as being leaders. And that's a dynamic that has changed. And so when somebody comes along and basically they're saying what you want to hear, hey, listen, they can be elected president.
Yes, we do hear that. Thank you for that, Judge. And so I'm staying here in New York, and so knowing your work, Ron, in terms of I'm sorry, Mr. Kuby. Yes.
You can leave out the knighthood.
well, then, having said that, I got to hear from you in terms of what are you seeing here in New York City politics, man?
To a substantial degree, I agree with Judge Tingling when he talks about being transitional and when he talks about being dominated more by star power than actual issues and debate. And having said that, though, I'm very, very happy to see Zoran Mandami in this race, doing as well as he is. Look, he's 33 years old. I don't know that his time has come for mayor. I think his reach exceeds his grasp, or his grasp exceeds his reach, whatever that line is. And I think a lot of the things that he wants to do are things the mayor can't really do. On the other hand, he has brought in young people. He has gotten an electorate engaged, young electorate engaged in a mayoral race in a way they have not been engaged before. Personally, I think the person who I would rate number one on my ballot, Mamdani, is number two. We have ranked choice voting.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And I won't explain the system, but I actually vote for Brad Lander. He's very progressive. He's an excellent manager in the sense that he's overseen the comptroller's office for years. He's done it very well. There has not been a whiff of scandal or mismanagement about his handling of billions upon billions of dollars. Not a single free upgrade on an international airline. Not a single person in a nursing home has died on his watch, etc. Well, that's actually not true. They die in nursing homes all the time, but it wouldn't be his fault. So I think now he doesn't have a lot of sizzle. As we say, he doesn't have a lot of charisma, although he upped his game dramatically by getting, arrested, manhandled, choked, and taken to the ground at a federal facility in Lower Manhattan when he was accompanying an immigrant who was facing deportation proceedings. But I do think it's transitional, and it's very hard to foresee what will actually happen in the general election, especially since the current mayor is going to be running, as he says anyway, as an independent.
Gotcha. Yes. So true. So very true. So, of course, Richard, you, of course, when you were here in this side of the pond, of course, you were also with a law firm that was known for civil rights and advocacy. So now from your perch there in, of course, the UK, what are you seeing? Any thoughts on what's happening in New York City? Or I'll even say in the US in general.
I think in the US in general, it comes down to it's more transactional than transitional even.
Oh, well said.
That it is all about doing a deal. And as if we were in some kind of bizarre marketplace where you buy and sell whole, not just lives and human beings, but it's entire peoples. And this is what has been going on and what goes on more and more. I am just staggered by this attitude that Trump has brought, and it's not Trump alone by any manner of means. It's an entirely new way of looking at politics, and I'm still baffled. I'm still grappling with this myself.
Gotcha. Wow. Well said. And well, you know what? I have another gentleman, as you know, from across the pond, who's never short on opinions. Ron, do you have a question, or would you like to comment? You tell me.
I have no question. You're talking about the sort of ethos on the ground there in New York City. I'm here in France, And just on a general point to be made is that what attracted me to France is that it's a country that essentially puts people before profits, which is, I think that's what the proletariat, that's what we want. France is engaged in this ongoing circular conversation where Macron will say, yeah, but the current social safety net system is very expensive, it's very inefficient, and the French are like, so I mean, they're willing to sacrifice efficiency for they feel like putting people before profits, efficiency, it becomes a victim of that. It becomes less important, and it's been just really interesting to see how the power of the French public and their willingness to take to the streets and coerce the government into taking corrective action when they feel like the government has forgotten that its mandate is to put people before profits. It just shows us what kind of unharnessed power we've had in America for a long time, which we're starting to see now in the streets being exercised. But I mean, given that the current administration's goal seems to be to prevent people from exercising their constitutional right to protect their constitutional rights. It's important that we recognize the power to mobilize and take part in demonstrations is even more important now than it has been for a while, I think.
Gotcha.
Excuse me. Hello. I think I finally showed up. Yes.
Welcome, Professor Wallace Ford. Welcome.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
So we started off with a simple question: the state of politics, New York City, and then I also from two gentlemen that are across the pond to get their perceptions from there. And as you just heard Ron concluding his comments, he's in the south of France. But I want to hear your take on your thoughts on New York City politics and what's happening here.
Yeah, well, what we're seeing in New York City politics is really, kind of interesting in a way. I've had the occasion to work with and around Andrew Cuomo over the years. I'm certainly aware of his work and activity, and it amazes me that he is anywhere near being in the leadership to be mayor of the city of New York, and how a number of black leaders literally. The day he announced, they flocked to him immediately, like, yeah, this is our guy. And there's a lot of reasons why he shouldn't be our guy, or anybody's guy for that matter. But it just kind of tells me that we have within the political structure here in New York, even though it's the majority of people are non-white at this point, and it's only going to continue to move in that direction. People are still kind of holding on to the old way of doing things. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. As a matter of fact, when we finish today, I'm going to walk across the street and go vote because it is, it's just that important. But I'm really concerned. Mamdani is fine. Adrienne Adams might be a good candidate. It's just too bad that she didn't decide to run earlier. Eric Adams is still there, by the way. And we could have a face-off between Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo come November, which is a hell of a thought. But that's one of the things that we may have happening at this point. As a matter of fact, when we leave here, the mayor has a minority, an MWBE task force that I've been a part of. I'll continue to join in that because it's for the people of New York. I hope he didn't kick me off for saying this at this point. But it's I think we've got some real difficult situations exacerbated by the fact that we don't have within the Black and Latino communities and a common kind of approach. Not that it should be automatons or anything like that, but there should be some things that we can all agree on and get behind one or more candidates as a result. And I don't see that happening right now, and that's unfortunate. That's unfortunate to say the least. Yeah.
Absolutely. Night Watchman, what you got?
Well, as a voter, I just find it incredible that we end up approaching these elections, and I don't like any of the choices. And I wonder, are we still in a democracy? I mean, it has the trappings of a democracy. We still go to the polls, on a regular basis, but and a lot of people obviously have been disenfranchised and feel like their vote doesn't count. I am not yet at that point, but I am concerned that, I look at the last presidential election and I look at the two choices we got, and, we had bad and worse, and I look at what's going on, I'm horrified by the mayoral choices. And before I say that, I want to say I don't want to dismiss any of the candidates. I think a lot of the candidates have good ideas and have some good track records. But being mayor of New York, we've always needed somebody who had a certain level of charisma, if you will, to get elected. I don't know if that's good or bad, but that seems to have been the trend that we've seen. And I see most of the candidates have very little charisma and very little name recognition, which makes them hard to get elected. So all of us are seeing the lineup that we're, potentially looking at Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams running against each other in the general election, and possibly a third Republican candidate. I mean, they're so emboldened now that they might actually run a significant candidate. I don't know who that would be, though. So,
well, Night Watchman, you know that Curtis, the other Curtis, is on that lot.
Sorry. Sorry, no. I mean, just my own thing. At the very least, I want a candidate who is showing a little bit more intellectual firepower.
Oh, gotcha. Well, hold on. Let me back up for 1 second, because I certainly, and Judge, I'm going to come to you because I did, of course, hear Kuby mention, Brad Lander, who I've known Brad for a long time, competent, highly competent. Also, when he was heading up the Fifth Avenue Committee in Brooklyn, but in terms of the real charisma, not really. But we need that to be an effective candidate in New York? Just tell me. Judge, you're on mute. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So going back to it's interesting. It seemed as though everybody agreed and brought in additional points on those agreements. So, Ron mentioned Lander and his stuff. So, and then the Night Watchman brought up about democracy. So for me, I always start with, you never get the right answers till you have the right issues. And in doing that, the first thing I think you have to define or come up with your own definition of what democracy is. Because I don't believe democracy is what the majority of people perceive it to be. We live in a country, I love history, and I've been around. We came through school. We all read Democracy in America by de Tocqueville. And one of the chapters talks about tyranny of the majority.
Wow.
In a democracy, if you have one more vote, then you can terrorize the other 49 people. Yes. However, what we did not perceive and what he could not conceive of in a democracy was the tyranny of the minority. And what we have today, in many ways, that's exactly what democracy is in America today, because of districting, because of the way you have different rules in different states that in effect preclude there being democratic elections. You preserve certain congressionals and thereby you control Congress. And then you keep moving from there. And so when we're talking about that, first we need to define what's a democracy. Number two, I heard a lot of agreement about star power and about, not having that charisma. If you want to talk about, for me, the most qualified candidate out of all of the candidates running for the election, quite frankly, is Scott Stringer. And I say that for me because Scott Stringer has been a politician and in politics since he was 3 weeks old. Okay. Okay. And you thought that after the last time he'd go away, but he can't. I believe that, you know, and I respect Scott. I've known him for years. I've worked with him. You know, we've had disagreements, we've had agreements, we work together. But when it comes to being qualified, truly, I think he's the most qualified person. But again, today, so much of it is about star power. And I wanted to say one more thing about what Ron said in terms of Mamdani. And that is why I said it's becoming transitional, because he has brought young people back into the game.
Yes.
And they are excited. They are very excited, and they are going out and voting. And so we need to see what a difference that's going to make.
Absolutely.
Yeah. If I could just add something real quick though.
Okay.
If we look at how the United States government got started, it was not started to be a democracy. Right off the bat, no women were allowed to vote. Obviously, black people were still enslaved, and women didn't get the right to vote nationally until the 1920s. For goodness' sake, and black people obviously. My point is, of course, that it was never designed to be a situation where whoever gets the most votes necessarily wins. 8 of the first 10 presidents of the United States were slave owners, for goodness sake. And that tradition has gone on. 40 states have less population than the 10 with the majority. But each of those states gets 2 senators. Each of the states that gets 2 senators. We're outvoted as a result here in New York in the United States Senate. Obviously, you see what happened with respect to the presidential election, which is that 65% of the people eligible to vote voted, which means that 35% didn't, which means that Donald Trump did not have anything like a landslide victory, but he says so enough times, and people start to believe it. We are in a situation where what's being written on the one hand is actually not the truth in terms of what we have had in this country and still don't have, which is a real democracy where whoever gets the most votes wins. The people who get the most votes get, and that can shift from time to time. And the last point I will make is that money is still playing a big role in this mayoral campaign. Within the week of his announcing that he was running for mayor, all of these real estate executives poured a ton of money. I'm talking about millions and millions of dollars with who? Andrew Cuomo. And they didn't care about anything else that's going on in the past. And ultimately, after all of what we're talking about, turnout is going to be the case. And I don't know that Mamdani's folk has a lot of folks who are cheering for him. I wonder how many are registered. Okay? And we've seen that movie. We've seen that movie before. And the last thing I'll say in terms of charisma, Michael Bloomberg, really? Bill de Blasio, really? Rudy Giuliani, for whatever you want to say, had charisma. David Dinkins, I worked for him, great guy and what have you. Would never call him charismatic, although he was a good mayor. So I don't know that we're going to really see charisma play a role as much as money and turnout. And that's where
Michael Bloomberg was able to reach into his back pocket and bought his charisma. So.
Fine. We don't disagree with that. No.
Okay.
But it's not like I'm sorry.
No worries. Staying. See, I got you. And Kuby, and Ron C. I know you're itching right there because we were talking about the tyranny. Okay, but Kuby, please.
Please what?
I want you to comment on some of those points brought up by the judge, as well as, of course, Wallace Ford. So do tell. Come on.
Okay. Well, as to Professor Ford's point, I mean, they're all, of course, completely valid, and we could spend a whole continuing education program on talking about the ways that anti-majoritarianism, that is rule not by the majority, has been a part of American life since the founding of this country, most of which, of course, is attributable as it originated in maintaining the institution of slavery and making sure that slavery wasn't eliminated from the growing United States of America. Having said all that, I do want to look forward a little bit to today and try to answer the question of what is to be done about the situation we find ourselves in, which I think we all have a good understanding of. I don't have to belabor just how bad things are right now. Do I think they're the worst it's ever been? No, but it doesn't have to be really bad.
Yes.
And I think that resistance at all levels is absolutely crucial. First and foremost, that of course means turning out into the streets, as so many people did on so-called No King's Day, where we had some 5 million people protesting against this administration and its more pernicious policies. We have specific people on the ground here in New York City. There's constant protests and indeed actual obstruction of detention vehicles and ICE arrests and the like. We saw what happened in Los Angeles, where indeed people turned out and mostly peacefully fought back against these waves of detention. And I think we have to utilize that power. I think we have to recognize that we do still have civil society institutions, including local elections and statewide elections, institutions that are strong institutions and are capable of fighting back to a certain degree against this administration. I think we have to try to find some Democrats who care about something other than whether we are supporting Israel enough. And I kind of despair on that one, since even so much of the mayoral election with Andrew Cuomo is about what he has called anti-Semitism, and the rest of us call sort of anti-mass murder. But that's a story for another day.
Gotcha. Well, Richard, your turn. Do tell, man. You're on mute. Yep, there you
go. This is. It reminds me of the reality of David Dinkins as mayor, and I knew him well, and I worked with him when we brought Mandela over from South Africa, and the catastrophic impact it would have had if Giuliani had been mayor at that time, by comparison with having David Dinkins, who did absolutely everything and laid back completely to let Mandela have his day in New York. And that it's a small thing, but it's huge on the world stage when, as somebody put it in relation to today's politics, that can you imagine Trump in the same room with Nelson Mandela? Can you it puts things into perspective. When we talk about charisma, that is not necessarily a positive quality of Clark Kent putting on his Superman outfit. It is much more an issue of somebody having the humility to stand back and say, this is your time, I'm going to give it to you. And that to me is one of the things that we just don't see nearly enough of, or see anything at all of today. So yeah, that's just my immediate take.
Very good, very good. Ron, we were talking yesterday about something, so would you like to comment on what you've just heard? You're on mute.
With regard to the importance of the point I made myself about mobilization and street protests, having said that, historically, I'm not convinced that authoritarianism cares what the people think or even what the people want. When I look at, mass protests that have risen up in response to authoritarianism, historically, it just filled up the hospitals, and the and the authoritarianism kept rolling right through them. So I don't have a lot of faith that that even significant protest mobilization will derail the agenda. I also want to make the point that I saw a woman who had fed the entire 813-page big, beautiful bill into a chat GPT program and asked it for its feedback. And what I found interesting, of course, it said this is a multi-pronged attack on the guardrails of democracy and would radically redefine and limit the power to manage a democratic process and usher in an age of authoritarianism. But on top of that, it was extremely impressed by how meticulously crafted, how well. What it does is we've got a system which is a good faith system. Like if the executive decides to defy the judicial, what happens? People, we don't know what happens. Well, we don't know what happens. We don't really have a system. We have a system that just assumes people are going to act in a certain way. And then here comes Trump, like a bull in a china shop. And our system is so fragile. What he's proven to us is that our system is so fragile because we're asking ourselves, well, what if? And nobody has the answers to these what if. And those people have spent so long, many years, these Project 2025 people, they've crafted this concise, coordinated, comprehensive, brilliantly strategized, devilishly strategized. They're attacking the weak points, the what if points, and it's so comprehensive. I just don't know what can be done that can derail it. That now that it's already starting to roll and be in effect.
Gotcha. Professor Ford, I know you've heard that. So what's going on?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. One, of course, is that, and just with respect to what Ron C was mentioning, if there's anything that is perhaps a feather to hang on to right now is that it will take a while to totally dismantle the systems that have been put in place over the years. Having said that, some things, just something like FEMA, for example, is being dismantled just in time for the hurricane season. So we will see death and destruction at an unnecessary level because of that. Having said that, and I guess we have to again just kind of look back at the history. It was never intended to be a fully democratic operation, but it has over the years moved in that direction. Having said that, of course, a lot of people got left behind. And, Black people still trying to be able to vote or have just been redistricted out of the game, in many places, including here in New York City. So we have those kinds of concerns. I think what we need to do, though, is look at what elections, what the electoral process and how that can be helpful. I wonder how many of the young people who are out supporting Mamdani are registered to vote. That is, I guess we'll see during the next week or so. But it's an important aspect, even at the local level and at the state level, so at least we have something of a bulwark. But when I read that, for example, Social Security will be broke by 2034, I'm still planning to be around in 2034. So that's very disturbing, to say the least. But that's just one example of the things that are happening at this point. So I would just say that we could either just I guess everybody move to the south of France where Brother Ron C is right now, or quite seriously, look at ways in which we can still impact and have some effect on the system. If we can't change things, at least we can stop some things. And if last thing I'll say on this is that while the Republicans, particularly in the House, are seem to be just like a rubber stamp for Trump, when you start seeing budget cuts that are affecting their constituents, which is what they're seeing right now, they've got to hold up on that because they have to go get elected in another 18 months. And it's not looking good if you're cutting Medicaid, Medicare. Nobody liked Obamacare until they did. And now they say we're going to get rid of that and so on. People are going to remember that come election time. And that's a problem for this. I don't think it's a cakewalk at all, although whatever the president can do by executive order, obviously he has been trying to do. But as the tale of Elon Musk proves, that hasn't gone as well as they thought it would either. So I think it's time to run up the white flag, but it is time to stay on our toes for sure and do what we can do, because otherwise there will be a point where moving it in a positive direction is going to be a lot more difficult than it is right now.
Absolutely. Judge, I'm back to you.
Well, two things.
No, I can only see the top.
You have another one. Go ahead.
I can actually only see the top of your head.
Which is beautiful.
There you go.
There we are.
Okay, so go ahead, Judge. We got you.
Well, two things. I want to thank Professor Ford because I believe he's validated my point. He has talked about the reality that what we perceive to be democracy was never set up to be what our perception is. If you go to my attitude, if you go to 10 people in the street and ask them to define democracy, and they're going to say it's the will of the majority. Okay? You have 10 people in a room, you get 6 votes, you win. What Professor Ford has continued to reiterate is it was never set up like that, and it has never been that. But here's where reality and perception come into play. In the same way where someone has the perception that their vote makes no difference, then they don't vote. And they're right. It made no difference. We have seen where voting does make a difference. For those of us of color, having come from generations where you couldn't vote or where you could vote, but there were so many impediments to voting, you did not get the ability to actually vote, although you had the right to vote. Also, I heard it said about, I'm sorry, Ron C., when you talked about 2025 and this meticulous planning. Well, I invite you, I don't want to get too heavy with this, but the blueprint for what is going on now for me was actually established almost 375 years ago. I invite everybody to go and just Google The Leviathan by Karl Hobbes, written in 1651. And you will see exact parallels to everything that is going on, everything from the White House press secretary, everything to the secretaries. And you'll note that every time they speak, every time they're heard in public, they never, ever go off air without saying these words in some shape or form. The people have given President Trump a mandate. Wow. Anyone that opposes Trump is interfering with the people's mandate, that he is the interpreter. And when you go, I invite you, just Google The Leviathan, written 374 years ago. And the theory of it is that there is a social contract, and that not the majority, but the many give up their liberty in return for a feeling of safety. Wow. Because they don't trust anybody. Okay? They give up liberty for safety, and they give that up to a form of government. And in this case, the form of government is the Leviathan. In the Bible, the Leviathan is a mythical sea creature that represents chaos and evil. In Hobbes' social contract, the Leviathan is given the authority and the power by the many. They trade liberty for safety and a feeling that their lot is no worse than what it was without it. Because without the Leviathan, there's chaos. However, once they do that, the Leviathan is the omnipotent, unchallenged, unquestioned decider. They decide what the law is. They decide what religion is. They decide what crimes are. They decide who will be punished for what crimes. Just look at what's happened. You had J6 that 2 years ago, they were insurrectionists. They were criminals. Today, they're patriots.
They're patriots. Yes, indeed.
This is
they are
part and
successful
parcel.
plaintiffs. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm telling you, go and Google the Leviathan, and you will see the blueprint for what is now being done in detail pursuant to the 2025 plan.
Kuby, you know I got to come to you, man. So you heard what was said. Leviathan, okay?
Right. And look, I don't have anything to add to the historical analysis, and I certainly don't have anything to add to those who have found remarkable precedents in older literary works. I do want to bring it back to a point Ron C. made with respect to the issue of what can mass protests accomplish. And, the thing is, none of us know what, if anything, is going to work in this moment. I agree that many authoritarian regimes simply stifle mass protests, and as you so eloquently put it, simply fill up hospitals. Other times they're much more effective. I agree with the judge that voting is absolutely essential in a way I never really appreciated as a much younger person. As a younger human, I always embraced Chairman Mao's maxim that political power grows out of the barrel of a gun.
Yeah.
But Chairman Mao didn't say political power only grows out of the barrel of a gun. I somehow read the only into it, as so many of my comrades did. And we do have the opportunity to vote, admittedly imperfectly, but we have seen the power of the vote dramatically changing some things from just 4 years ago until today. I also think that I'm encouraged, at least, by the resistance shown by some of the big law firms. I'm encouraged by the resistance shown by the universities, again, attacking the rule of law and attacking education and science is a playbook of authoritarianism. So I'm not without hope for the future. I just think that if we are going to save what we can save, it's going to require a lot of work. And I don't think anybody has the perfect solution. I'm encouraged that the courts have stood up, admittedly imperfectly, and admittedly at their usual slow, analytical, mind-numbing pace. They haven't just said, this is all BS and we know what's going on and you're not going to do it, President Trump. They've been very, very careful in their analyses. I was surprised that while the administration has said, we will comply with court orders and then on occasion not comply, what they have not said is, we are not complying and we're not going to comply. And doing that would be a significant step forward toward authoritarianism. So I'm heartened, but by no means terribly hopeful that we will prevail.
Wow. Well said. And one of the things I harken back to a Dave Chappelle skit when he became the president of the United States, right? And yes, and the UN was going to place sanctions, right? On it, but then Dave said, well, you know what, you just do that, because you know what, you ain't got no army. You got no, so what can you do? So when the court says something against, let's say, this administration, truly, how can how else can this administration respond but just ignore it? Richard, what are your thoughts, man? Oh,
hold on.
I've unmuted. I think the question of the role of the courts is a very, very tricky one, because what they have done and what they have seen has been a masterful attack, because they have run down every every program that they wanted to run out there, they've run out.
Mm.
They have had a lot of knockbacks, but you know what? Those knockbacks take a long time, and it's not just the delays of the courts. I mean, you imagine filing the kinds of briefs that have got to be filed in cases like this, the number of people you've got to bring together to challenge these cases. You take them to one level, they go on appeal, they go to the next level, they go on appeal, and by the time you've actually got an answer from the courts, it's almost, well, I'd say it's almost irrelevant, but it's getting to be of questionable strength and power to be able to argue that there's nothing has changed, because they make little changes. They'll carry out modest revisions if necessary, but the fundamental thrust is constantly there. So how do you fight against that? And I'm afraid it's got to go to the streets. It's got to go, it's got to get done, it's got to get dirty, because unfortunately the courts aren't strong enough to withstand this pressure that is coming on from so many different angles all at the same time. So, yep, we're going to have to fight it in the courts, we're going to have to fight it in the streets, we're going to have to fight it every which way until there is another election in 18 months' time, and then another one in 3.5 years' time. We're just going to have to keep fighting and fighting, and I don't see any alternative.
Wow. Wow.
I want to ask people what they think about the escalation of the conflict in the Middle East, our role in it, and where are we? I feel like we're closer to World War III than we've been. I mean, in my early part of my life, I was a kid when we had the Bay of Pigs and all that stuff going on, and I was blissfully unaware of it. But now I know, we got kind of close then. And, I think we're kind of close now. Now, I've been told by a friend of mine who's knowledgeable that we're at DEFCON 3, in the military parlance, which is where we were after Bay of Pigs, after 9/11, after Yom Kippur War. And maybe we're easing toward 2. So what are your thoughts on where we are in the Middle East, and are we being drawn into the prelude to World War III?
Who would like to take that?
Yeah, I would start.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. Just for starters, I think that, and I was a little bit older during the Bay of Pigs, and of course the missile crisis.
Yeah.
But I do remember being told in school, we have to get under the desk. So I guess they make it a little neater to just bury everybody at that point. But what in answer to the question, though, and I think it's an important one. I don't think that Donald Trump is interested in a world war. It is hard to make and keep money during those kinds of situations, and I don't think that that's what he has in mind. However, Netanyahu has been saying that Iran is very close to having a nuclear weapon since, I think like 2006, 2007. And so he's been saying it over and over and over, and and taking these actions right now. Everybody's forgotten about Gaza as a result. My point is that, in many ways, the situation in Iran is kind of like a distraction play that's been organized by Netanyahu, and most Israelis, I don't think support. Don't support him, but they're with him because they're in this state of war. I don't think that the Russians want a nuclear war. I don't think that the Chinese do either. But I think that in answer to the basic question, you keep dancing around with it, and you could kind of stumble into one of those sequences where, okay, you did this, so we do that, and all of a sudden, we do have a world war. I don't think that's going to happen. but I think we're going to come too damn close for comfort, and that'll be a problem in and of itself. So I think, but if you look at the history of what Israel, and particularly Netanyahu, has been able to do in terms of managing the United States, to where it's like it's you can't, if you say anything bad about what Israel is doing, then you're anti-Semitic, and there's a big difference between being anti-Israel and being anti-Semitic, but they've merged the two, and that has been a very successful effort on their part. But we're going to have to work around that. Otherwise, we could get caught up in something more than what we want to see. Right now, it's all of that is over there. Could there be something happening over here? Sure. But I think that's probably long, not at least some way down the line. But I do think, again, that we have to be careful on being managed by a master puppeteer here, Netanyahu.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else?
Yeah, let me just say, I think a lot of really, really terrible things that are not World War III will almost certainly result if the United States intervenes directly in support of Israel. We have this charming notion that, well, we'll drop a 30,000-pound bomb on the nuclear facility and we're done. But I kind of am guessing the Iranians won't think that we're done. And I think Iran certainly has a capacity to harm Americans both abroad and here. We will then call that terrorism. Then what will we do? I mean, one of the things that got Trump elected was dissatisfaction on the part of the American people with these endless, constant wars, even if it was Republican President George W. Bush that got us into these in the first place. Certainly both Republican and Democratic administrations supported those wars. You look no further than Joe Biden hugging Benjamin Netanyahu and happily supplying all of the weapons and aid that are contributing to the slaughter. So I don't see a lot of difference between the two administrations when it comes to that. If anything, I think Donald Trump is more restrained than other administrations would have been, largely for the reason Professor Ford so eloquently stated, that war is bad for business. But okay, I'll take it. I'll take it. You don't have to have a noble reason not to plunge us into an endless, ongoing, low-intensity global conflict. Any reason will do. Gotcha. And Ron C., of course, at the time you were working for the UN, and I believe you were actually doing the inspection for weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah, I was in Iraq with UNMAVIC in 2003. And it quickly became, we had biological inspectors, chemical inspectors. We had the guys who could come in, and every expansion was unannounced, and we would have the guys come in, the computer guys, and it doesn't matter what you think you've deleted from that hard drive. They can find any document that ever existed. And, my guys were coming back every day from we had 6 helicopters, 120 vehicles. We had the 200 inspectors. And every day, nobody found anything. And the intel was coming directly from the Pentagon. So I'm in this Orwellian, surreal situation where I'm watching Rumsfeld and Cheney telling the media, CNN, we know where the weapons are. And they're sending the addresses to us. And we're finding squat day after day after day. And it soon became very apparent that not only was there no WMD program, but that the Americans were well aware that there was no WMD program, which means that the whole thing was a sort of public relations fiasco, similar to when they brought the Kuwaiti ambassador's daughters in disguise up to Capitol Hill to testify about the Iraqi soldiers dragging babies out of incubators.
Oh, incubator babies! I remember the incubator babies. Yeah.
And I questioned what kind of soldier wants to come home from the war and tell his wife, "I got you an incubator."
Oh God!
What about the people? The Cassidy Eagles too. Remember?
Yes.
So we've seen this kind of subterfuge before. My problem, I agree with the point that Ron Kuby made, that, you know, Bush has been, Trump has exercised a fair modicum of restraint, but ultimately he seems to me to be a guy who doesn't know the difference between a gamble and a strategy.
Absolutely. Gotcha. So, Night Watchman, yes, remember what we spoke about early, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gentlemen, normally this is an hour taping, okay? But this conversation is quite interesting, so I'd like to know whether or not you guys can stay on a little bit longer.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, why not?
Judge, remember, you have the gavel.
Okay.
Oh, you're mute.
One thing, one thing I would mention though.
Hold on one sec, Judge.
Okay.
Go ahead, say what. Go ahead.
Yes, I just
you're on mute. Okay.
Yeah, I had to unmute.
Okay. Perfect.
Okay, so I'll do this point. I agree with basically everything that everyone has said. Okay. And again, because one reason is I think everybody has brought up the point about there's reality, there's legality, and there's perception. I think everybody in this room remembers one of the famous Lincoln quotes, right? You can fool some of the people all of the time, all the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time.
Yes.
Well, he left something out, and that is you can make enough of the people some of the time perceive things that are totally not true.
Yes.
And that's just as good as convincing them that it is true. Okay, because you know what Ron C. just quoted, he said he was there every day. There was nothing there.
Correct.
You know, what's interesting to me is did you know how bad it is? We went to war. We had friends, relatives, people that we knew lost their lives. The destruction, the economic chaos.
Yes.
All of that took place over something that in effect didn't exist. And to show you how bad it is, after all of those things that happened, after all of that, when's the last time that anyone even heard the term WMD or WMDs in the past 15 years? It literally disappeared from the English language because that's what you can make people believe. It never happened. And that's what we're seeing today. And to me, that may be the greatest danger, that it's getting so easy to convince people when you constantly bombard them with false information. And then once they believe it, you have them. And that is where we will be in trouble. In terms of what's going on in the Middle East, you know, that goes back so historically. I'm with Ron. I don't have answers for that. I truly don't. You know, but I do know one thing: the amount of loss of life, okay, and the other things that are going on there is simply, it should be intolerable to anybody of conscience.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
Richard, you heard that, man.
Yeah, I did, and I couldn't agree more. I think one of the really important problems that the world faces is that nobody, perhaps including Trump himself, knows what he's doing next, or knows perhaps even what he's doing. He walks out of meetings. He insults people in meetings. He puts on a constant stream of a constant diatribe of calls to people to stop what they're doing, but nobody really has a clue what he's going to do next, and that makes it hard for let us say the Prime Minister of Great Britain to actually have a clue about what's going to happen. Whose side is he on? I mean, Tony Blair cozied up to George W. Because it was the right thing to do. Yeah, well, brilliant. That was absolutely a disaster you could see coming at the time. But right now, nobody knows. And I think the other thing that is really scary is that Netanyahu is very smartly calling all of the shots, because he knows ultimately he can do pretty much anything he likes. And the worst that Trump will do is say, "Oh, that was very bad. You shouldn't have done that." And you know, these expressions like "very bad," or "very good," "super colossal," "wonderful." I mean, the man's vocabulary is appalling. And yet he is the leader of the free world.
Yes.
Comrade,
Yeah.
let me look. I don't want to make the case for reckless stupidity. But, okay, in fairness, if you look at what brilliant planning has gotten us over, let's just talk about the post-world. Let's talk about from 1960 to date. The best and the brightest got us the Vietnam War.
Yes.
They all thought this was they had a plan, they had a program, they were consistent, and it ended in disaster. One of the most brilliant men, I think, to ever ascend the American political stage to the presidency, Barack Obama, who was neither impulsive nor stupid, decided it would be a great idea to rid the world of Muammar Gaddafi. And now Libya is a chaotic, failed state. So I agree that it's extremely disturbing to watch the president of the United States act like a man in the throes of some sort of verbal dementia, uttering a word salad of craziness. But I don't know that his instinct around not getting us in another war, that I don't know that instinct is the wrong instinct here.
Gotcha.
Yeah, let me just mention one thing, because I think it's important. We talk about history, and you said going back to 1960, but I think we got to go back a little bit further than that, because if you go back to 1945 to 1947, the establishment of the State of Israel was not something that had to happen. It happened because it seemed like the most convenient thing for European and American powers to do. The whole notion of a promised land, if you will, was not necessarily focused. This is among the Jewish people. With respect to Israel, it could have been Alaska at one point. It could have been
Uganda.
in Uganda. Thank you. Uganda as well. They just wanted a place, but it was convenient or they could have carved out a piece of Germany. Okay, at that point, right? Germany was on its knees. They could have done whatever they want, but the most convenient thing to do was to just move some of these Arab people out of the way and just say, yes, we're going to give this land to Israel. I remember going to Israel as part of a delegation from the city of New York when David Dinkins was mayor, and the gentleman showed me his deed to a house across the street that was no longer his, because the Israelis came in one day and said, you got to go by 5 o'clock today. Okay, and over and over and over, land was taken and land was taken and land was taken, and people get cranky over that, and so people say, oh, it's the Palestinians that do that. Well, if somebody came over and took over New York, I think there'd probably be some former New Yorkers that would be a little cranky about it as well. That, of course, was followed up by, the independence of any number of countries there in what we call the Middle East. And in turn, the conflict with respect to Israel continued based upon the fact that people said, well, you didn't even, why are you, what is your claim to this land? And of course, that's when the fights begin. I think the notion of there not being a state of Israel is kind of a settled fact that, just like, Manhattan is not going to go back to the Native Americans either. But I do think that this notion of expansion in the West Bank, and of course what's happening in Gaza, Israel is the tail wagging the dog. And I think unless and until we try to break that, and it's not being anti-Semitic to say that Israel is wrong. There's two very, very different things. There's a number of Jews who certainly believe that as well, and I don't think they're anti-Semitic. But as long as if you say anything bad about Israel, then you're anti-Semitic. You fall into this rhetorical trap that leaves us with a possibility. Listen to what we're talking about: a possibility of nuclear war in the Middle East, which will leak over at some point to Europe, and what's next, right? So at some point we're going to have a more rational conversation. Frankly, I don't know how that happens, but if we don't, we're going to have a real big problem. And it goes back to 1947. It really does.
Absolutely, Ron Kuby. I heard you about to chuckle there. Go ahead, sir.
No, I just raised my hand when Professor Ford was talking about Jews who oppose Israel and are not anti-Semitic. I was, I'm one. Okay.
Gotcha.
I mean, I think what I should probably do is just convert so people will stop calling me a self-hating Jew and just call me an anti-Semite.
I got you. Judge, thoughts?
Well, I just want to chime in. Professor Wallace hit it on the head. Again, I love history. I'm a historian. I'm gonna take it back even further. The seeds of what is transpiring in the Middle East today go back politically back to the Balfour Declaration in the early part of the 1900s, where a group of white countries, basically England, America, France, sat down on a map and drew what the Middle East was going to look like. If you recall, at the time, the predominant force in the area was the Ottoman Empire, which is today Turkey. And for those of us that are old enough to have sat and watched 4 hours of Lawrence of Arabia, I remind everybody that the tribes that were fighting with Lawrence were Palestinians. And the Palestinians were fighting with him, who represented the British, because the British promised them their own independent country, the country of Palestine. And then they betrayed that. And then the next thing you know, we're in the 1940s and we're there with Professor Wallace Ford, tracing it back to that. And again, I'm in agreement with everyone. I damn sure don't have an answer.
Gotcha. Well, needless to say, Richard from the UK, what Judge Tingling, what you just heard, do comment.
I saw Ron's hand raised as well.
Oh, really?
Because we share a mutual shame here, which is hard for anyone to beat, because we enslaved half the world, and it's not a claim of which I'm particularly proud, I have to say. Ron, what you got to say?
I've got to say, I didn't enslave anybody. I'm Jewish.
Not you.
No, he means Ron C.
Not you, Ron. Not Ron Kuby.
Ron C.
Kuby,
it's not you. It's Ron.
They came from Shtetl in Russia.
It was not you, Ron.
By the time we got here,
Ron Critchlow, who did you enslave?
Yes, Ron Critchlow. We want to know.
I was enslaved by my children. But I would take it back before the Balfour Declaration. I'd go back to Manifest Destiny.
Ooh.
There we go.
Because in 1908, Theo Roosevelt wrote that America could not have remained a nature preserve for squalid savages. It was the duty of the higher race to displace the savages so that humanity could advance and prosper. And in 1948, Churchill testified at the Royal Palestine Commission that he does not believe that a great wrong was done if a dog is disturbed from a manger because somebody needs to sleep there, in the same way that he does not believe that a wrong was done to the red man by his displacement or the black man, and that it was the duty of these superior races to advance humanity by displacing these populations. And of course, Hitler said he felt like in his theory of Lebensraum, which is room to live, made exactly the same point that Churchill and Roosevelt made, which and he made it perhaps a bit more in a more collegiate level way. He simply said if the superior races have a need to expand, it's within their purview to displace inferior races. So ultimately, you know, their disagreement was on which races appeared on the inferior list, which races deserve to be on the superior list. Just in terms of theoretical, they were in staunch agreement that there are superior races and there are inferior races, and so I think that the Balfour Declaration was a manifestation of we will give the Jews who were considered superior to the lowly Palestinians, and of course now we're in a situation where for the people who are oppressed, peace is the absence of oppression, but for the oppressor, peace is the absence of resistance.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a bar. Okay.
Well, Night Watchman, are you part of the superior race or you're in between? Well, do tell. What's going on?
Well, I mean, there's a race of people who are critical thinkers, which I'm a part of, and we're superior. Yes. But we cross all demographics. So. But I want to switch directions and ask a question about the role of big money these days, because what we've seen is a shift toward. We had the old big money, which is like the Koch brothers and all those folks, and they did a great job in terms of setting the table of basically controlling the Supreme Court. But now we have the new tech bros, so to speak. You know, there's been a mass creation of wealth coming out of Silicon Valley. And you have Elon Musk, who is the public facing, and then you have Peter Thiel, who is the Sith Lord behind it. And you know, their interactions and involvement with the U.S. government right now, as well as their involvement in the politics, is disturbing, to say the least. And it combines with the whole thing about perception. How are we in a point, you know, when we talked about we can fool you know, enough people some of the time, all the time, because we can make, you know, up look like down, blue look like green, and that's all because of the, you know, the levers of control of the internet and how people are consuming information. So where does that leave us now? I mean, all of it scares me, quite frankly. But
yeah.
Well, you know, one thing, just real quick, is the Citizens United decision. You got to put a point on that someplace along the line, because the Citizens United decision opened the door to unlimited corporate financing of elections.
Correct.
Okay, and that's where all of that, you know, there always were rich people, but not like they're obviously more rich people than ever before. But they couldn't exert the power that they exert now. And so the reason we even know about Elon Musk, aside from his rocket ships and what have you, is that he was able to put $250 million into Trump's campaign to help him get elected. Yes. You know, that could not have happened 20 years ago. But now that's what we're dealing with here. And we have so much wealth in the United States that that is moving in a direction that doesn't include us, doesn't include most people. And that's how you can talk about cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, and all of that. I know I talked out of turn, but you need to put Citizens United in that mix there, because that changed the way that this country operates, perhaps forever.
So Richard Harvey, so you've heard the Night Watchman there in terms of big money elections. In the UK, do we have that similar type of dynamic, or what? No.
And that is, you can say what you like about British politics, but you cannot say that money makes a huge amount of difference over here. Not you can't buy and sell elections in the same way.
Okay, so then you know what? I got to stay across the pond. Ron, in France, tell me.
They have very strict limits on how much campaign financing a party can spend on a campaign. Very strict. In fact, one of the convictions that Madame Le Pen was found guilty of was for campaign finance irregularities, and I think it's a better. I think that's a better system, obviously, than the one that we've now seen play out to its logical extension. You know, you extrapolate money in if you extrapolate money in campaigns to its logical conclusion, he who has the most money wins, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? So Judge, you heard, of course, what Professor Ford said, Citizens United. But my question would be, well, twofold, because you are a student of history. So Citizens United, that's one, whether or not it will ever or could ever be overturned or reversed. And the other, in terms of, let's say, the Electoral College, will we ever in our lifetime see that go away?
If the 2025 plan continues to be effectuated, then my answer is yes.
Okay. Expand.
Because if the 2025 plan moves out not to its natural extension, but to its expected and intended conclusion, then there won't be any need for the Electoral College, because there won't be any need for the courts, and there won't be any need for the Congress, because, again, going back, there will be the Leviathan. The president's authority will be unimpeded. It will not be restricted. You know, you saw Professor Wallace said, everything is coming at the court so fast. They are inundated. They don't quite know how to do it. Those that opposed abortion, those that wanted Citizens United, they fought that battle for 50 years. In 50 years, what battles are they going to be left to fight? At the moment, the road that we're heading down is a democratic dictatorship. Now, that may sound like an oxymoron, but it's going to be a democratic dictatorship because the people will have been convinced that they voted for the ultimate omnipotent leader.
Wow. Kuby, please weigh in.
Oh, gosh. So, I mean, again, bringing things to today and what is to be done, you know, I was never a big believer in Dr. King's The Moral Arc of the Universe bends inexorably toward justice. I'm butchering the quote, and I'm sorry about that. He deserves better. But I've never believed that. I don't think there is a moral arc to the universe. I think there's what we do and what we create. And one of the things my late partner, William M. Kunstler, the great civil rights lawyer, understood very deeply, or at least articulated very clearly, is this struggle is perennial. It's not the first time we've been here. It's not even the second time we've been here. It's the duty of all of us to move forward, fight the battles that our generation faces, to participate in the struggles that present themselves in our lifetime, and continue to fight for a better, more just and equitable world. And so I think that is what needs to be done. And I think we use all the means and methods that we're suited to. I mean, as I tell, I've got a raft of protesters, many of whom are facing felony charges around recent protests. And I say, you know what? I am way too old to mix it up with cops on the street. I will break something, or more properly, I'll have something broken if I do that. But what I can do is go to court and represent you. That's what I know how to do. And I think as long as we all make a commitment to do something, it may not work, but it will leave us in a better place than we would be in if we all did nothing.
But well said. Night Watchman, because we love this panel, and so we don't have endless amounts of time, so we're probably going to have them back. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, but before we say that, I
Yes.
think we want to just give a note of thanks to this panel, not only for just joining us on short notice, but for the
Night Watchman.
I'm not finished, please.
Okay, I'm backing up.
Okay, so this panel, these gentlemen have been in the game for years on what I think is the right side of it, and really, with integrity, fighting for a better America and a better world. So I just wanted to personally thank you guys for all the things you've done. And even for you, Curtis, for putting the panel together.
Well, Night Watchman. The reason I was saying is that we're almost at that time. So before we actually say goodbye, we have to do, of course, our lightning round.
Well, with these guys, I don't know if it's going to be lightning, but we're going to give everybody a chance to say their last piece.
I'm a lawyer. I get paid by the word.
Wow. Okay.
Your clients pay you?
Good one, Night Watchman. That was pretty good. Okay. Well, needless to say, Judge, some final thoughts. Any last comments before we move on? My brother, Judge Milton Tingling. Go ahead. We got you.
Well, first, I want to say it's been an honor to be on the panel with everybody. I actually have another meeting in 3 minutes, so I have to leave.
Got you.
We do these panels, we do these shows, we stay in the game, and many times for the listening audience, we can, I believe, come off as being negative because we don't have the answers to all the questions. We bring up the bad side of things, but I never leave an appearance or even a conversation without taking it to the positive. And so I just want to say to everybody, again, an honor to be on the show. But to the listening audience, for God's sakes, keep the faith, stay in the game. If you don't participate, we have already lost. And the game isn't over. Okay, and we will survive. As my sister has been saying for the past 60 years, Aluta, the struggle continues.
Wow. Judge,
thank you.
Thank you, my brother. Absolutely. All right.
Goodbye, everybody. I got to roll.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge. All right. Ron. Oh, I'm sorry. Kuby.
What he said.
No, you're not getting off that. You're not getting off that early.
That's exactly right. Those are my final thoughts. He just articulated them first. I'll leave it there.
Beautiful. So let's say someone wants to get in touch with you. They must also have money to pay you, correct?
No, none of that's true, but it doesn't. I mean, occasionally somebody does pay me, and when I announce that I work for free all the time, it does not encourage paying business.
Gotcha. Absolutely. Richard Harvey, across the pond. Do you take Venmo, Cash App? What is going on?
No, Venmo doesn't work over here. Listen, this has been a wonderful experience. There's only one criticism I have.
Tell us.
Why are we all men?
Okay. Well.
Okay.
I was born that way, dude. That's why I'm a man. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Apologies for the penis.
Well, go ahead.
let's have this again, and
Yes.
I really look forward to it. It's been an honor
Oh.
to meet everyone except Kuby, and Kuby is just more than an honor for me.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I have to interject by saying it's very appropriate for Richard to ask that question. That was the question that used to be asked regularly by Marlene Archer.
Yes, all the time.
And I will give Curtis, to his credit, he was trying to put this panel together, and he was looking to balance it out.
Yes.
And it just sometimes it just doesn't work out.
Yes.
That's the ups and downs of putting these things together. So I will say in his behalf, he tried.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Night
but,
Watchman.
But on behalf of Marlene Archer, do better, Curtis. Do better.
Wow. Okay. Having said that, now Ron C. comments. You're on mute.
Go ahead.
Call me naive, but I was encouraged by the fact that 38 Republicans voted against that big, beautiful bullshit bill. Because I don't know if the judiciary is going to be able to stop this what's going on necessarily, and I don't know if protests will stop it. But I feel like I still hold out hope that moderate Republicans, who we know from insider talk, actually don't really like Trump much more than anybody else outside of his MAGA bubble does. I feel like when push comes to shove, I think that they'll grow a backbone, and I'm expecting to be pleasantly surprised by the resistance to at least the attack on the Constitution that the moderate Republicans will mount. I mean, I could be totally wrong, but I do think that there's action to be had on that front.
Beautiful. Professor Ford, final words.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I would just say that, it's one of those things you say, well, I agree with everybody. But I actually do agree with much of what's been said. I think that, you can't, I don't think you can give up. And I don't think anybody's suggesting that. I think that we do need to figure out ways to be more creative and to be more inclusive. I teach at college. I teach at Medgar Evers College, which is a predominantly black school as part of the City University of New York. And I purposely teach freshman level students because I think it's important for senior professors to talk to the freshmen. And the level of engagement and the level of awareness is so low in terms of what's going on. Maybe they know who the mayor is, don't know who the governor is. Everybody knows who the president is, don't know who their elected official, and don't know what to do about it. Okay, and so I get a few students that kind of move that way between beginning of the semester, end of the semester. But we need to focus on these young people. Young people have tuned out, and think it's okay, and won't realize it's not okay until perhaps it's too late. Unless we older folks figure out a way to get them on the right track. Beautiful. So there we go.
Thank you for that, Professor. Night Watchman, would you like to take us home?
But before I do, I want to ask you, Curtis Archer, what are your final thoughts?
My final thoughts. Well, I believe that I have assembled a powerful panel. No surprise there. But also the fact that I feel, as a voting member of this society, do feel that this particular, I had bought into the whole notion of a democracy that is in trouble, and that I need to remain engaged. And Kuby, I, like you, I'm too old to be out there marching and possibly breaking something, okay, on my own person. But I will continue to stay engaged and knowledgeable, and not be an embarrassment to Professor Ford in terms of not knowing who the governor is. Okay, so so there you have it, Night Watchman. Is that good?
Yeah, that's good. We all should know who signs their paychecks. So
Wow. Now,
It's been a pleasure.
I cannot believe he went there. But anyway.
Yeah. But
yes.
you've done a good job of representing, what I think are the right causes. I myself am scared to death about where we are, but I think that's a good thing because it means that I'm still engaged and I haven't checked out. And we're doing shows like this because we don't want anybody to check out. We want to make sure that people see all the things that are going, and we literally appreciate the insights that all the panelists have given us today. So you've been listening to Soul Lounge Prime Time on WACR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem, although our radio audience is probably tuned out about a half an hour ago because we only have an hour for the radio show. But if you're still with us at the end on YouTube and Facebook, we really appreciate it.
Yes.
And we know that this has really been some great conversation.
Yes.
And we invite you to join us again next Monday with a show that we don't even know how good it's going to be because we don't know what it is yet.
well, Night Watchman, the primary question, will they all be invited back to the cookout?
Oh, absolutely. But some of them have to charter planes early. So we got to give them some advance notice to when the cookout is going to be.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you so very much, guys. Thank you.
Okay.
And if you have not yet uploaded your headshot, Kuby, please do it. I think we have yours, Wallace. We have yours, Ron C. And Richard. No, that's right. You too, Richard. Upload your headshot.
I don't have a headshot.
Don't worry. We'll work it out.
Grab something off the internet.
Yeah.
Well,
For Ron Kuby, I'll do the extra. I'll do the extra work for him. Absolutely.
Okay.
That man has been working for the people for so long. He doesn't need to send us a headshot.
Gotcha. Gentlemen, have a great rest of the day, okay? And a great weekend.
Take care.
All right.
Bye now.